Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Is this working? Theoretically, the stream is starting in 5 minutes, but I thought I would just press play already just to see if everything's working. So if you can't hear me or the audio is really low, just let me know. Okay. Let's see. Hi. From Indonesia. Wow. Oh my God. It's insane. It's so nice to just hear from where everyone is from. I love that part from the Blender conference always, when Ton in the keynote presentation is like, okay, where's everyone from? And you really get a sense of who in the world is actually using Blender. It's just like all over the place. Awesome. I guess people can hear me? Nice. I already see your first question. Can you post a video on how to make a human character in Blender 2.91? On the Blender Cloud, I actually did make a tutorial series on making stylized characters for film productions. It's not that beginner friendly, but I'm still trying to explain a lot of fundamentals and general stuff. So you can check out that and see if it helps. Or if you're just interested in maybe downloading the files, you can also do that. I made everything available there. In general, in the Blender Cloud, you can download all the character files and have a look at how they're actually built. But yes, welcome everybody, everyone who's already in here. So last time, in the last stream, I was sculpting the chunky snail, which was one of the last characters that was still to do. For the film production of Sprite Fright. All the other characters are pretty much done, at least in terms of sculpting. And now that the sculpting is done and we did a bit of iteration, which is the current result that you're seeing on screen right here, I slapped a bit of an EV lighting setup on top just to make it a bit prettier. But essentially, it is still just kind of this thing with material and vertex colors, just very simple. But I just put in like 3 lights, one of the HDRIs that comes with Blender, set a nice strength with it, and that's basically it. So, but maybe you can see that it already changed a bit. I can open up the previous state. So where I left off last time in the stream was pretty much this end result, which still needed a bit more polish. And in the past days, in the past week since I did the live stream, there was a bit more iteration on top. And basically, I went ahead and just polished it a bit more. So this is, sorry. This is the direct comparison. So you can see I changed some volumes a bit more, polished up the shapes a bit, increased the resolution just slightly, and I sculpted in an inner mouth with just a simple subdivided cube as a tongue. Just quick and simple, just to get an overall feel for the character and how it compares to the concept. But then there was a bit more, yeah, chunky boy. Then there was a bit more discussion with the director and the rest of the team on what expression we want to go for, because this was the expression in the painting. But the storyboard, the animatic, actually has a different expression drawn in. So we went in and adjusted it a bit further so it matches the storyboard more that we have and the expression in there. Because this character is pretty much only visible in one shot up close. So we don't really need any big rigging setup. We just kind of sculpt and retopologize it in this pose, and that's it. So this was basically just the update, just tweaking the eyes and the mouth and putting on a little bit of a different expression. And this is basically the finished result. From there on out, I just slapped on a nice little lighting setup, and I can just retopologize it on top. But as let's check out the comments. VFX-based short film. I mean, that would be amazing, but it's not planned right now. But I was thinking like Tears of Steel was a really interesting experiment in the catalog of short films that Blender did. So doing some more weird and interesting short films would be super welcome. But yes, like I just said, I would retopologize this in pose, which is something a bit unusual. Usually when you make a character, you want to T-pose it, you want to have it as neutral as possible, and then make a very straight, symmetrical retopology. If you're interested, there's actually like, I already recorded a bunch of, not tutorials, but videos of me just working on the regular snail. So there's all of these videos on the Blender Cloud. You can find it on the, if you go to Films, Sprite Fright, and then on Content Gallery. In there you find all kinds of different folders, and there's production lessons. And in here, there's this short series of videos of me just recording myself, giving an overview of all the animal characters, sculpting the snail, and then retopologizing it. And in that example, the snail is actually very straight. It's, if I go in here in all the characters, there's snails over here, and we can check out in the comparison of like just here's the retopology where I just made everything kind of symmetrical and straight and as simple as possible. But the original sculpt was very much asymmetric. It had a bit of a pose in it, an expression to make it as appealing as possible and really to bring this character across. But once you go into retopology, you want to hand it over to the one who's remodeling this. You should symmetrize it and make a kind of neutral pose out of it to make it as helpful as possible. So this was basically the result out of that. But for the chunky snail, I'm going to go a different route. I'm going to just retopologize it in pose, which is a bit more forgiving. It's a bit easier, but I also can't rely on symmetry as much. Yeah. But also to show some other examples, I also already retopologized all the other critters, all the other animals. So, for example, the ladybug over here is already retopologized, and it's very symmetrical. And for the other characters, we basically also did a similar workflow of, like, this is the sculpt that I did for Ellie. I could just change the lighting setup a little bit. So this is how she looks like. And there's a fair amount of detail in this. If I toggle on wireframes, you can see the resolution is pretty high. And most of these have a multi-resolution modifier on top. So the base resolution is kind of crude. It's very quickly modeled. And then I'm just subdividing it to get more detail, more control, and sculpting on top. But for the retopology then, I needed to have this T-posed with a neutral expression, everything as straight as possible. There was even a shape key in here to make the ponytail straight. And then I handed this over to Angela Jeanette, and she made this retopology. And if I turn on wireframes, it's much lower, much cleaner, and has everything we need for the animation, which can be pretty wild for the expressions especially. So that's basically it. So let's get started with the chunky snail. So I did make this EV lighting setup, but like if I also increase the samples, it's a bit prettier. But in the current alpha version of Blender that I'm using, there's a bit of an EV bug in there, and it's not that reliable. So it is pretty to look at. I like it. And for example, I do love when people actually model and sculpt directly in Eevee, which is very much possible and should mostly run as fast as the regular just solid view. But for my case, I'm just going to use solid view, so just the general workbench engine. So in this file, this is now the chunky snail snail_chunky.modeling file. I already imported the Sculpt in here and also the turntable with the camera and lighting setup, so I can just turn it around. But I also already made a CH snail chunky collection over here. And in there, I'm going to put the retopology. So I'm going to click on it so it's active. It's active because it has this little white background on the collection. So every object I'm now going to add into this collection, add into the scene, is going to appear in this collection. So to start off, I generally really like to not start anymore with a plane. Like you could just go in and create a plane and put this on top, and then in edit mode just kind of start snapping this onto the model and just polymodeling everything from scratch. It gives you a lot of control, but you're also making everything like building a cathedral one brick at a time, and it's you can get lost in it and suddenly make something that doesn't actually look like the thing you wanted to make. So what I'm instead going to do is, generally I like to start from a cube or a cylinder, which gives you a nice little base to start from. And that's basically what I'm going to do. I made the snail a bit more of a different color, and I'm using a darker matte cap right now. The reason why I'm doing that is just so I can see what I'm selecting a bit better. If everything is white, then I can't really see as much the selection highlight. This is just helping me a bit. And basically what I can just start doing, I have the cube. I can just go into orthographic. I made a custom shortcut to go into orthographic view, but regularly it's 5 on the numpad. Or if you have this navigation gizmo thing over here on the side, you can just click on one of the buttons there. But yeah, I'm just going to rotate this just so if I turn the orientation to normal or local, I can see that the y-axis is going actually in the direction of like where this chunky snail is facing. To be honest, actually, I'm going to go the other route. I'm going to select everything in here, and I'm going to rotate it so that it's more straight. So maybe I can turn on grid. This can help me a bit. And toggle on X-ray just so I can see the grid as well. And now toggle off overlays. No. Okay. I just want to center the snail just a little bit more, just so it's actually facing the front. That's at least a bit helpful. It's still very asymmetric. It's not actually facing the front. It's still looking a bit to the side, but this is at least helping me a little bit. So if I bring the cube back, I can center it a bit as well. I can go into edit mode. I'm just going to add a cut in here with the loop cut tool. And just as last time, actually, no, I didn't actually. I don't think I mentioned it in the live stream. I'm not sure, but in the other videos I did. I'm using a custom key map that I built myself, where I mapped all the shortcuts to the tools over here on the side. So you can do that fairly easily by just right-clicking on it and saying assign shortcut or change shortcut. But it takes a bit of time. So don't be confused if like suddenly gizmos and things are popping around on the side. So if I'm adding a mirror object, a mirror modifier, I get the other side back. I'm enabling clipping just so things that are actually going into the middle are actually staying there and not moving out. The one I do is just... Yeah, there's so many great improvements every time in a new version. I'm personally a bit stuck on the alpha version because there's experimental features in there that I really like to use. Otherwise, I would love to rely a bit more on a stable version. But yeah, I mean, I need to test the new features anyway, so I'm always using the latest alpha version, the experimental builds. Okay, so I'm adding... but yeah, I could recommend everyone to download the latest version of Blender, 2.92, just released. It's amazing. Okay, so I can just grab all of this. Another really great retopology, like for the retopology in the viewport, what I like to use is in the overlays. There's a toggle called hidden wire. It hides the faces, but the faces are still obscuring other wires that are behind them. So now if I turn off X-ray, this edge over here, I can see it now. But if it's behind this geometry over here, it's actually hidden. So it helps you out a bit more on seeing the sculpt underneath and still getting a good view over your actual retopology. The other thing I like to do is in the object tab over here, in the viewport display, I usually toggle on in front and wireframe. So if I go into object mode, I have always wireframes on top of my retopology. And I also have this object drawn in front of all other objects, always, which is really helpful. You can map a shortcut to this if you're using this often, or add it to the quick favorites menu. Personally, I just made my own little menu over here where I just toggle this, but it's basically no different from using quick favorites or shortcuts. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just subdividing this box and moving around these vertices to get a bit more of the general shape of the object. Can also enable the mirror modifier over here, the on cage toggle over here, which actually lets me see the geometry on the other side as well. Even though only this side really exists, I get to see the other side as well. Now I'm actually going to extrude this outwards, move this edge down and this edge in. I don't care too much if this is super clean and straight right now. The other side that I get from the mirror modifier is like a rough estimation anyway. I'm not relying too much on it. I'm eventually going to apply this, but for now, this is good enough. So I'm just kind of moving stuff around, getting things in the general shape of the object. Like this, sort of. This is already getting pretty far. What I now like to add is a shrink wrap modifier. Just so I can immediately pick a target, which is the sculpt over here. And now it is shrink wrapping the result. So basically snapping everything onto the sculpt. I can hide the shell for now. The shell I'm probably going to repurpose. I'm just going to grab the retopology I already made for the regular snail, just to save some time. But now I already have two modifiers. I like to use snap mode above surface always, pretty much, because if I'm using the offset slider over here to kind of gain distance from the original sculpt a bit, then it's not confusing which direction it should actually go. If you set it to above surface, it's not suddenly going inwards, which can sometimes happen. But I'm going to leave this at 0 for now, just because I don't need it right now. And I'm just going to add more loops in here. Just sliding stuff around a bit. Actually, I'm going to also add a loop over here. Oh, wait. Actually, if I'm using the shrink wrap modifier in edit mode, I actually can't. It's actually not using in front anymore. It's a bit of a weird issue. I hope this gets improved at some point. But yeah, this is basically almost all of the resolution I need for now. I can add another loop over here, maybe some more over here, but I don't want to make it too high res for now. I just want to have as much as I need. So what I would like to do now is snap everything on top of the surface so it's not floating around anymore. I could enable snapping, set it to faces, and project individual elements. Make sure that's on. I also like to have backface culling on. And now they actually snap to the surface if I move them. But a faster way for now is actually to use the shrink wrap modifier. So I can just duplicate this one. So I have one still in reserve and apply one of them. So now everything snapped to the sculpt. But because it didn't really take the mirror modifier into effect, the loops tend to kind of escape the middle axis. So I'm just going to let's set this to local. I'm just going to grab these, turn snapping off again, grab these and nudge them back into the center. And then I'm just going to continue nudging stuff. Mostly when it comes to retopology, that is going to be a big part of it, just nudging your vertices around. It can be a bit tedious, but there are tools that can help you out. Of course, the retopology workflow that I'm showing it's basically the classic one. You could say it as that almost, because there are tools that can help you out. There's automatic remeshers out there. One of them, which is built into Blender by default, called Quadriflow. You can find it in here in the Geometry tab under Remesh and then Quad. It's a great start sometimes to use that, especially if you're just planning to sculpt on top, but it is prone for error. So sometimes it just kind of breaks. It's not the best option, but if it works, it can save you a lot of time. Otherwise, there's also add-ons out there that are really popular and for good reason, like Retopoflow, which, I mean, it's giving you a great tool set, but it is you need to pay money for it. So I wanted to really give you a bit of a workflow if you just want to use Blender by itself for free, which is still a really good way of retopologizing too. Like, you don't need to buy a lot of add-ons. Blender is working just fine by default. Yes. So what I can do now is I could add a bit more loops over here. When I'm sliding the loops, I like to turn off snapping, just so I don't accidentally snap it onto a surface. And what I want to do over here is get these over here, really get the creases in the right spots. The loops onto the creases. I can also push this one down here, so that kind of aligns. So I kind of lay out the loops for the most important landmarks. With normal maps baked from do you think that using the new Multires modifier when sculpting could help and speed up the retopology process with normal maps baked from the higher subdivisions into the UVs of the lower res? Yes, I think that's a very valid workflow. If you don't, I use that workflow a lot, not necessarily baking, but just keeping the multi-res modifier alive on top of the object, because you basically get all of that detail for free then. But for retopology, I mean, it works. It's just if you have a character that moves and deforms a lot, you don't want to have a multi-res modifier on top. And baking from a multi-res modifier can also be tricky sometimes. I personally would actually recommend to just bake from a separate object. But that is also because the multi-res modifier could use some improvements. But just keeping the multi-res modifier on the object is actually a fine workflow. To be honest, for the short film Spring, we did exactly that. partly because of technical limitations, because we were using the pre-alpha version of 2.80. We kept the multi-res modifier on the creatures, which allowed us to add a lot of detail without baking anything. And it actually worked. Like, we were just able to rig and animate it without much problems. So I would say that's actually a valid workflow. Does pose its own problems, but it works. Yes, no background music. I recommend people to actually just put on their own music. I didn't prepare a playlist so far, and I couldn't really decide on what I wanted to listen to. And I don't want to just listen to music by myself, just in isolation, and you can't hear it, because it relaxes me. I get to work a bit more, like almost like in a Zen mode, basically, but I don't engage as much with the comments, probably. I could see that, where I'm just I'm in my own thoughts and I'm working away. But I want to keep looking at the chat, keep commentating, and I think the music would actually distract me a little bit. Yeah, and it needs to be royalty-free, ideally. I don't want copyright strikes on the official Blender channel. But I do have a bit of a backlog on CC BY and royalty-free music, so I could put together a playlist if I wanted to. Maybe for next time, but for now, I just recommend people to listen to their own music. So yeah, what I did right now is for the general body, I aligned these loops to kind of match the general proportions. You're not going to follow the edge of the layer with the oh yeah, exactly. This thing is going to be the next challenge. I wanted to align these first. Yeah, exactly. I also don't want to put on music that's really distracting for you guys. But I also don't want to put on music that's so calm and peaceful that it's almost annoying. It's something to think about. But yeah, everyone has a different taste in music. So what I could do now is, now that the loops kind of align for these kind of general volumes, I could try to follow the topology, make the topology follow this layer over here a bit more, which is actually, I think, the most tricky part of this retopology. This is kind of challenging. But before I do that, I would love to apply the mirror modifier, I think. I'm just going to save real quick, apply this. Also, I just want to, for as an experiment, yeah, this is how it would look in Eevee if I would just work on it. I mean, if you want, I can just like try to keep working in Eevee for a little bit and see how it goes. But the one thing that wouldn't work is if I would go into Sculpt mode. I mean, that wouldn't work anyway. Sculpt mode doesn't have a hidden wire overlay. But the reason why I want to use Sculpt mode right now is because I want to shift everything a bit more into this asymmetric model. It looks like the base mesh you're working with is non-symmetrical. Is there a reason the sculpt wasn't done in what's an A pose for Slug? Yeah, we decided against it for this particular character, Mike. I just saw it was your comment. Because it saves us a bit of time, and the character is only visible from one pose, really, from one angle in one singular shot. So it doesn't need a complex rig. It doesn't need anything fancy. And so I'm just going to retopologize it in pose, which is, funnily enough, something I did before, only in one project, I think. And that was, if you've been at the Blender conference in 2017, there were the little interstitial movie clips for the Suzanne Awards with the bees. And there was like a big fat bee king, or like bee queen, that was like on a Suzanne head, as if it was a throne made of honey. And that bee queen was just sculpted and retopologized in post because we didn't have any time. But yeah, that's basically a similar workflow. But yeah, what I'm doing right now, I want to actually I'm going to let's see, in front doesn't work, but I want to change the display type to wire. Hey, this actually works. Wow. And now I have the same result in sculpt mode. Okay. This is actually very helpful. So now I can use what I'm doing is I'm using just general grab brushes and especially the slide relax brush, which is sliding and relaxing geometry without trying to change the shape of the object, to just align this edge over here with the mouth. I want the retopology to be just as asymmetrical as the sculpt, but in a sort of symmetrical way, I guess. It's just so the geometry is kind of the topology is symmetrical, or as symmetrical as I can do it, but it's still following the shapes and forms of the snail. Kind of like this. Yeah, Eevee is a great, awesome, like a really good viewport way, like a way of working in the viewport. I really like it, but it does have some limitations still. I think the way forward is really to just like embrace Eevee more as an actual way of working in the viewport. It is possible, but in some modes, in some workflows, it's still a bit tricky. You need to go a bit out of your way to make it work. There's a bit of setup involved, but I love it. If this becomes more effortless to use. I mean, right now I had to enable a bunch of options to make this really useful, like making this only a wire object, enabling in front, and all that stuff. So, I mean, I can keep it like this for now. Go back into edit mode and tweak this a bit. Actually, I want to make this. If you're wondering what option I'm toggling right now, it's in the viewport viewport display and the object tab, and there's a display as toggle, and in there you can set it to solid or like wire or bounds even. But I'm generally toggling between wire and textured. But it is causing a bit of problems in edit mode right now. So I did toggle it off again. And also I put this one on the other side. Oops. What I also like to do sometimes is just duplicating and applying the shrink wrap modifier. Just so everything snaps back onto the sculpt. So this is already pretty good, but now the challenge is really to follow the shape. So this might need a bit of restructuring now. What I would like, let's just try it this way. Okay, I'm curious. I wanna knife cut my way through this just as a start to kind of get a sense of where I want this topology to be. Like this. And then I can, with J, just kind of cut in here. Oh yeah, you can copy modifiers. It was always here in the drop down, but if you look at this, there's actually shortcuts on the modifiers now since a couple versions, I think. So you have a little blue outline, and that is the selected modifier, and then you can just press Shift D to duplicate it, or X to delete it, or Control A to apply it, and you can also drag them around. And I think modifiers got some really great updates in recent versions. It's insane. It's so much more effortless to use them. But yeah, now it's a bit about cleanup, I think. I need to, oh, this was maybe a bit over eager on my part to already apply the mirror modifier, because ideally I would like to keep the sides symmetrical. There's always something new to learn about Blender. Yeah, especially because there's constantly new versions coming out. So it is really easy to miss something, but it also feels a bit like a treasure hunt constantly. Suddenly you're just clicking a shortcut or watching someone else's video, and you just realize there's a new feature that is gonna make your life a lot easier, and you didn't know about it. There's always something new. Awesome. So this is almost what I would like to have, pretty much. Oh yeah, actually, let's just do it like this. No, I actually like this side more, what I did right here. So I'm gonna slide this on top, just slide it up, press G to slide, select everything, M, merge by distance. For you, the M menu is probably going to be a list, but for me it's a pie menu because I remade it myself. So in the case the triangles would not be an issue, or do you plan to take them out later? Yeah, I'm basically kind of sketching out the topology that I need. Just the general loops and edge flow, the essentials that I'm going for. And now what I'm doing is I'm just selecting these and say merge to center. And then I have it kind of like this. And I'm just going to try to retroactively get rid of the triangles. So I can just select these, merge to center, and now that's kind of resolved. But I'm constantly selecting points, pressing J to cut in between, and just kind of trying to clean it up more. So now I have these two faces over here, triangles. I can press F and merge them into one quad. Over here, I could maybe try to do a similar thing. It's all a bit tricky, but I like the puzzle aspect of this. Sometimes it's a bit inefficient to work this way, but it's suddenly you just basically working on a puzzle. I really like it. So now I can subdivide this. Again, I have my own menus. This you would just find these sort of things in the right-click menu, context menu. So now I can merge this. Still snapping. And I just want to, and with the knife tool, I can just go further in here, cut away things like this, cut in these parts, merge these two faces like this. I can, merge by distance. Actually, what I'm going to do is, okay, first of all, I'm going to take a sip. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to enable this toggle right here, which is auto merge vertices. So if you enable this, it's actually using this threshold distance right here. And if you now have 2 points over one another, they are automatically going to merge. So you don't need to always do this merge by distance thing. Is this a rule of thumb that the mesh is in squares? Are triangles worse for performance? Triangles cause issues if you subdivide the model, because squares, or quads, how we call them, are really subdividing nicely and evenly. But if you have two triangles, they will actually try to subdivide in a different way. Triangles and n-gons. N-gons, which are faces that have more than 4 sides. And I can show this real quickly. I can add a subdivision surface modifier and just disable optimal display. And now you can see everything is kind of subdividing really neatly and nicely. But if I would split this, it would subdivide this in a different way, like before. And essentially what it's doing is within this triangle, it's going to add a point over here in the center, and everything's kind of gravitating towards that and pinching towards this point. So if I would subdivide this, for example, a lot, you can really see what I mean. There's little pinches going on here. And over here, there's you don't want to have these pinches, essentially. So triangles and n-gons are really causing this a lot. But also, not just triangles and n-gons. This point here has 3 connected vertices. And this point has 5. This one has 4. This one has 5 connected vertices. And these are called poles. And if we see it here, it's causing the same effect. It's compressing, it's stretching and kind of pushing out geometry. And that's going to be visible. It's going to be actually visible if this would be on a hard edge or if it would be on an area that moves a lot, like deforms a lot in various ways. So you're trying to minimize these sort of poles and especially triangles and n-gons as much as possible. But I actually wouldn't say triangles and n-gons are a complete no-go. They are actually used a lot in retopology. And if you're looking at retopologies, even from Pixar, like any big studios, they are actually strategically putting in n-gons and triangles into their retopology, especially in places where you don't see them, and they're using it in a way to minimize the amount of loops that are just going all over the place. So there are actually really good cases for using n-gons and triangles. It's just if you want to have it super clean and get actually just doing it in just a good default proper way, I would say aim for quads always. Just always try to retopologize ideally everything in quads and have no n-gons or triangles in there. But I also saw a comment just a moment ago, quads are still triangles, and that is true. In the end, when it's being rendered, everything is converted back into triangles anyway, but it does have an effect when being subdivided. And that effect is visible on the surface in terms of the stretching and pinching, and it's visible on the UVs and shading as well, because it's also stretching and pinching the UVs. So just be mindful of that. But let's say you have a hard surface model, just a robot, and nothing over there is going to move or deform in an organic way. You can get away with a lot of dirty topology. If it's not visible, if it's not causing a big effect in the render, just do whatever you want. As long as you know what kind of problems it would probably cause. Or not cause. So I'm actually getting a bit sidetracked. Sorry, if you want to see a bit more of this. I basically only this time, again, have 1.5 hours because Blender today is going to start at 4, I think. Yeah, it must be 4. So I have only a limited amount of time. Maybe for the next streams, I should put it on another day. Then I'm not in the way of Blender today. I get to maybe work here and talk with you guys for a bit longer. I don't mind streaming for like 3 or 4 hours if it needs to be that long. And then it can be a bit more relaxed, can be a bit more leisurely going along and retopologizing something or sculpting something. But yeah, over here, now this is kind of going in the way I want it. I'm going to probably rebuild this part over here on the mouth later on. Big fan, thank you. But what I want to keep doing right now is to just kind of have these face loops follow this line over here, which means it's probably going to be asymmetric unless I bring the other side back somehow. N-gons with subdivisions. My world view has been shattered. Yeah. one big thing to look out for, I mean, if you're just working in Blender, you don't have to worry too much about subdividing n-gons. It's going to cause stretching, but that's to be expected. But be sure, if you're using an external render engine, that n-gons are actually supported. Because if I'm just thinking a few years back, n-gons were not a thing in Blender. So if you're putting in n-gons and you're exporting your model into a software that's not actually supporting it, you're going to get into trouble. So be mindful of where your limitations are with your render engine. He looks tired. I am a bit, but I try to stay on top of it right now. Had my coffee just a moment ago. Okay. This is getting a bit ugly. Isn't Blender today on Monday? Today is Thursday. I was confused as well. I was just asking Pablo a moment ago, and he said it would be at 4. So I guess there's 2 Blender todays. I haven't watched it recently, so I'm not sure how the schedule is exactly. There we go. There we go. Okay, this is still not ideal. I'm gonna work on this later. I'm gonna just undo this and keep this kind of open for interpretation for now. This area here. Let's just put a bunch of triangles in here just to see this is actually still work in progress. It's 6 here. Yeah. I hope everyone is I mean, people are watching from a lot of different countries. Usually, it's a bit tricky with live streams to see it live. I have that sometimes when I want to see something live, and it's in the US, it's on the West Coast, and then it's just impossible. Or it's at least really tricky. Why don't you enable the edit mode and on cage for shrink wrap modifier? The reason why I'm not doing that is because the moment I do that, the in front shading is no longer working. That's a bit of a limitation. Oh, within on cage, it's actually working, at least for the mirror modifier. But for the shrink wrap, it's not going to work. This is not a mirror modifier. Okay, it actually works. Oh, I was confused. Well, yeah, this is actually really nice. I could do that. Generally, this one has an offset. Yes, that's why I did it. Sorry, I was a bit confused. Because when I'm going into sculpt mode, I want to have it on top of the sculpt a bit. So I'm setting a bit of an offset so it's not like inside. And that can be a bit useful. But then in edit mode, I don't want to have this on while I'm snapping stuff onto the surface, because it's gonna get confused. It's trying to snap it onto the surface, but at the same time apply like a slight offset and then snap it back, and it's flickering as a result. So I try not to do it, but yeah, it's actually a valid workflow to have the snapping always on. Actually, let me duplicate this. Set the offset to 0 on this and enable this one for edit mode. And this one is only visible in object mode and other modes. So now I get what I want, and I just with 2 shrink wrap modifiers. Triangles within quads because triangulation, yeah. N-gons and cross software support is a hard no-go. Yeah. ZBrush is a great example. ZBrush has a bit of a limitation on what sort of geometry works. Blender is very forgiving, but you really need to make sure that if you're working with different software, what you're like, the sort of geometry that you have is actually working. What do I do over here? I think I would like to. I'm gonna just. To be honest, I'm just going to delete one side for now, completely. I only want to work on one side. And I can still duplicate, like I can still go Shift D and Control M and mirror it across. Oh, that didn't work just a moment ago. I can still do it. Or maybe apply a mirror modifier. What did you just click on? Oh, I don't know. What do you mean? I'm clicking through stuff a bit fast right now. I'm sorry. So now I can move this stuff around. And I can join these two with J. J instead of F. F would create a new edge, but J is actually splitting the face in between. So that's useful. I'm actually going to subdivide this. Get this right now. And then let's just merge this to center. You think, yeah. Oh, well. I mean, this character is really supposed to be for kind of one joke in the movie. He's just on screen very short. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm gonna keep it light on commentary about like what this character is for in the movie where he's appearing. I'm talking a bit more freely about spoilers on the Blender Cloud in those production lesson videos. But there again, I'm also trying to keep it relatively light. I don't want to spoil everything. How long is the movie? The original plan was about like 6 to 7 minutes, but then it just inflated because it has so many characters in it, a big cast, and that's why we needed to increase the length to about 10 minutes. At one point, it was about like 15 minutes or something, but we had to really hardcore cut it down. But the same thing happened in Spring. The runtime of Spring was very long because we originally had a long intro in it, and we cut that out completely. It's actually amazing how you can handle a manual retopology while answering to the chat. It's like a person working at the rest of the office, taking a coffee break around the desk. Thank you. I'm still freezing a bit. Just if I can't talk and work at the same time completely, but I'm doing my best to keep this going and commentate everything at the same time. I think I got used to this a bit during, not just from making tutorials, but also during the Settlers project, another open movie project on the Blender Cloud. I actually decided to just record everything that I'm doing, like all the time. I was sitting at home. It was while the quarantine started, and everyone was just working at home, and I was just on my desk in the kitchen, on the dining table because I didn't have my own work desk at home, and I was just recording everything constantly and commentating everything that I was doing. So you can still find those videos on the cloud right now in the Settlers project. I think they're still kind of informative on making these loose, really simple characters. But unfortunately, the videos are a bit out of sync right now. Freezing. You did more than what I can do in 5 hours. Well, thank you. Actually, I find retopology very mentally boring, so I can totally get the talking and retopology at the same time. It's true. What I usually do during retopology is to just listen to music, or sometimes even have videos like podcasts or something on the side where I can just tune out a bit, because most of what I'm doing in retopology is just the same thing over and over again. It's a puzzle. But it's kind of a puzzle of your own making. You're just figuring out problems as you're creating them. So, and at this point, I mean, it's just most of the time it's pretty straightforward. So you're just going through the motions. But I don't find it that boring personally. I actually really love it. Sometimes there's still a bit of like tricky portions where you really need to think about how do I handle this? How exactly should this work? There are still challenges involved, and I like this challenge, this puzzle element. But when it's not challenging at the moment, it can be very relaxing. Yes, same thing with UV unwrapping. I find it very relaxing, to be honest, to just go in and just go through the motions. And I can see a thing coming together slowly and becoming more complete. It's like working on a puzzle for a couple hours or a few hours, and you see the thing slowly coming together. But there's still a bit of tricky elements where it's just, how do I do this? What am I doing wrong? How many characters will there be? There's a main cast of 7 characters. It's like, it's the main character Ellie, then Rex, Victoria, Phil, and Jay, all of the teenagers of the movie. And then there's the sprites, which is essentially going to be the general sprites, which we're going to make probably up to 20 variations of or something, but just small variations. It's going to be mostly procedural through shading, I think. And then there's going to be Elder Sprite, which is kind of like the Papa Smurf sort of character in the sprites lineup. And then there's also animal characters. So this is one of them. And there's the bird, there's ladybugs, there's butterflies, there's spiders. There was originally also bunnies, but yeah, I'm not spoiling anything. I'm just like trying to keep everything light. Everything that I'm talking about, I would ideally keep it to like everything that goes up to like the inciting incident, just nudging towards that. But I don't want to give anything really away. I don't want to spoil anything. But if you do want to spoil yourself and check out everything that we're doing right now on the cloud, even there we're trying to keep it spoiler light, but we're working on the movie, so you're gonna see some of the stuff that we're working on. Only the edit really, or some really major spoilers, are usually also blurred out with a big spoiler tag, and you can just click on that if you still want to see it. Anyway, I'm actually getting lost a bit in commentary. I don't know what I'm doing anymore right now. Where was I? Did I say Emily? Oh, maybe. Yeah, her name is Ellie, the main character. She used to be called Emily, but at some point her design and role in the story changed so much that we actually decided to change her name completely. Just basically hitting a bit of a reset button on the character, which is pretty interesting. Let's see. Maybe I can inset this further with the knife tool. Why didn't you turn like clipping on? Oh yeah, I did originally have the mirror modifier on this thing, but I just decided against it. I applied it because the sculpt is not symmetrical. This one, I'm just retopologizing in pose. It's the only character that gets this treatment. Every other character, I think I still have the files open. I'm just going to say, sorry. For example, this is Ellie, our main character. And I did sculpt this partly in pose, and then partly back into a T-pose for the Retopology handover. And this is the Retopology by Angela, Jeanette. And this is basically the state of her. So it needed to be in a T-pose, it needed to be in a neutral position and neutral expression so that we can slap a rig on top and get as much control out of it as possible for the animation. But because the chunky snail, as it's just going to be visible in one shot, we decided against making a neutral pose and just retopologizing it in pose and making a really simple rig on top, just to nudge things a bit more in a different position. Oh wait, why did I add a loop over here? I'm not focusing. I think I wanted to actually get rid of one, but it's actually a bit of a bad idea. Do you hate n-gons and shading issues too? Oh yes. I can add one over here. But n-gons can still be useful sometimes. I don't rule them out completely. But if you want to do something cleanly, yeah, don't go for n-gons. How would your snail even look in a T-pose? That's a good question. I do have the regular snail was T-posed. So if I go in here, this was the regular snail. Just like a really quick side tracking. This was the regular snail. This is the sculpt that I did, and this was also not T-posed. It was not. It was fully in pose. So I did further sculpts on top of it, but then for the retopology, I symmetrized it, and this is the T-pose. For the I call it a T-pose, but it's more of a default straight pose. Just straightening up everything a bit more, opening the eyes, making everything symmetrical, everything looking straight, so we can make a retopology out of it. We could have done this thing for the chunky snail as well, but yeah, we didn't. How do you change the color of your Blender to green? Oh, yes, I do have a custom theme. It's basically the default theme. I changed nothing added. I only made the buttons more rounded, and I made in here in the themes options 3D viewport. I think over here, no. I think it's user interface, and over here for every part of Blender, you can actually adjust the colors. And it's a bit tedious, but I essentially changed the roundness of all of these buttons, and I changed the color of all of these different editors. So you can find basically anything in here and change the colors however you like. It's a bit tricky to do it, but you can do it. Yes. I still think 100 people watching is a lot, to be honest. It's basically like having a full, or like a big, like a pretty full theater on the Blender conference. So I appreciate you guys watching a lot. Thank you very much. But we also just recently started to live stream on the Blender channel. We were thinking of if we wanted to do it on a different channel, but it's actually nice to do it on here. Then, yeah. Oh God, I thought it's easy, and nothing is ever truly easy. It's easy enough. I think the biggest difficulty with, with the themes. No, it's not easy, but it's mostly the same colors repeated all over the place. So if you just Control C over a color. And that's actually something you can do. If you go in here, like UV image editor, let's say, theme space. Nah, let's see. What's a good example? Status bar? Where are the colors, actually? I forgot. I think it is actually just user interface. And then over here, let's say, yeah, over here, I have one of them. So this was originally just the blue, but you can actually change the color to anything you want, and then you can also Control C and Control V over these colors, and just go Control C, go to the next option, Control V, go to the next option, Control V, and just go through it really quickly and change the colors everywhere fairly easily. Still a bit tedious, but I mean, you're watching a live stream on Retopology, so it's very much in the spirit of what I'm doing right now. Shrimp, they can be sometimes. Okay. Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad you find this entertaining. I'm doing my best. I'm just gonna. Actually, I am going to let's delete these faces. I want another loop in here, just so I can fill this up. Oh, wait. Can I fill this up? I can fill this up. Let's actually delete this face as well. I can do this. Merge this down and put another loop right here. Is that wise? No, not really. Subdivide this. Maybe. What am I doing? To be honest, this is one of the cases where I would say a triangle is allowed. It's on the bottom side of the snail. No one is ever going to see this. I call these sort of elements, these sort of aspects, like areas of the retopology graveyards, where anything where you just kind of don't see what's going on, you just kind of snug in a bit of triangles and n-gons or any amount of poles that you want, because no one's ever going to see them. It's tucked away and it's going to be bumpy. That's hence the graves, but I can get rid of some loops and just kill them right there. So how Blender Retopology compared to Maya Quaddraw? I have seen any okay, I would say the retopology in Blender is pretty solid, but you need to be aware of some of the viewport options. So for example, in the overlays, I enabled hidden wire, so it just shows you the topology while obscuring everything that's behind it, and you can still see the sculpt. There's also, let's just say I delete this. There's also the poly build tool over here that just gives you a bit more of a dynamic way of getting rid of elements and faces and just kind of extruding this out. And then with you can just select an edge over here, press F, an edge over here, F, F, edge over here, F, 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 and just fill everything in really quickly. Are you familiar with Quaddraw? I watched videos on it, but it's been a while since I've used Maya, so I think I need to check it out again. So maybe I'm not fully familiar with it, sorry. To be honest, the polybuild tool in Blender could use some work. The most reliable workflow, I think, is still using just the F2 add-on, where you can just select a corner vertex, press F, and it creates a new face, and you could just quickly create these sorts of areas. Other than that, check out the Retopo Flow add-on on basically anywhere. I think it's mainly on the Blender market. It's a bit of a price tag, but if you are really working in retopology a lot, it's actually a really nice tool set. I recommend it because it saves you a bit of time, but to be honest, like if you know what the tool set is in Blender by default, you don't need to pay any extra money. You can just work with what you have here. This is fine. Where am I? Oh, I have less than half an hour. Oh God, I'm sorry. I would like to get this as far as possible. To be honest, I think I'm going to focus on one side for now and not really bother with the other side. You can imagine what I'm going to do on the other side afterwards. I'm probably not going to make another live stream for the retopology on this character because it needs to be done soon. But I want to get this most of the way, at least. That would be nice. That would be really nice. Created quite a few loops over here. And you can toy plot vertices and build faces between the... Okay. Yeah. I do like some of these tools that are a bit more versatile. Right now, I'm doing a lot of switching between different tools to get like the knife, sliding, everything. That's why at least shortcuts are really helpful, but um, it's tricky to make a tool that can give you all of the necessary functionality just really easily accessible. But usually it helps a lot. So I can imagine the Maya, what was it called? The quad draw, yeah. Uh, it's probably really versatile and helpful. I hope that the poly builds tool is going to get there soon as well. I mean, this is combining also a bunch of functionality. You can click, move things around, nudge them. You can delete faces. You can create new faces from scratch. And if you're using right-click select, which is a bit of a disclaimer, you can also still select points and use every other tool at your disposal. Will you be live streaming on this channel later? Depends on what you mean with later. I would like to ideally keep this on a weekly basis, maybe on another day, not Thursday, so it doesn't collide with Blender Today. But I would like to keep this going. That would be nice. And people seem to like it. Maybe I could also do some other tasks, but I think mainly working on the characters is where I can actually just really focus on what I'm doing and commentating it. When it comes to environments, I think I would rather just focus more on the task at hand because I'm less proficient with that, I would say. But maybe I will do some more live streams just working on the props, to be honest. Especially maybe there's still some really complex props that I can show how to make. Yeah, I think the general topology is kind of nice. This still doesn't look that great, to be honest. I would like to make a face here. I want to have these loops kind of follow this line over here. I don't want to have anything go off in a wrong direction. So the edge flow is the most important part, where you really just like the loops are following the shapes that you have in the sculpt. I'm really confused. I thought Blender Today was only on Mondays. Maybe something changed. But yeah, today is Blender Today. Maybe it's 2 times a week. It could be. Maybe there's enough to show right now that it deserves to be 2 times a week. That is awesome. For a short time, there was a Blender every day. And that was during I think it was during the quarantine when COVID really hit the Netherlands. Yeah, then we just did it every day. You can also freehand draw multiple parallel strokes. Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, I can really imagine the tool sets getting broadened and getting more versatile. That would be really nice. Thank you. Pablo's response: Blender Today starts in about 98 hours from now. Wait, what? Mike, what? 98 hours? Wait a moment. I still have the chat open on the other side. Hours? Oh my god. Oh, I misunderstood. Wow. Let's say I'm not going to put this on a deadline, then I'm just going to keep working. Awesome. So it's not 20 minutes anymore that I still have. I can just keep doing this as long as I want to. Awesome. Thanks for the disclaimer. Mike, I actually understood it wrong when Pablo wrote me. I read minutes, and that kind of coincided with how we did it last time. Okay, much confusion. Awesome. So I can just keep working. Nice. So, I mean, it could be that I could just sit here for as long as I want. Right now, I have it here 20 before, like I have a 340 right now, and I don't mind sitting in this room a bit more and just recording. But yes, I wanted to. Okay, I kind of focused on this part right now. So I don't like this pole right here necessarily. Like it's 5 connected edges. Please talk a bit about generalization and specialization. Oh, animation or modeling. Yeah, I mean, talking about people at the studio, we're all pretty much generalists. We have a bit of a, like, we're specializing towards certain fields, but we all kind of know how to do anything. I mean, I'm not really versed in animation or rigging, but people generally tend to wear a lot of hats in productions here at the Blender studio. During spring, we had a very small team, and during Coffee Run, it was even smaller. It was tiny. It was a short project, so you really need to hand off tasks to all kinds of different people, to a short team of people, and work pretty much on everything at the same time. I have a super simple question about Blender that you might be able to answer. I downloaded a 2D rigged character and has textured right in built file. Maybe it shows an Eevee. Otherwise, you just go into solid mode and set it to the color method to texture. But you also need to select the texture node in the material so it can show up. It's a bit convoluted, but it does have its logic and it sticks to it. But yeah, I was mentioning this pole over here. I'm not really a huge fan of it being right there, but maybe I can move it further up here. And I want to... so tricky. I want to have this move a bit more towards over here. And then it gets kind of dispersed into the rest. The vertex sculpt paintbrush, I love it. It's the vertex sculpting, vertex painting in sculpt mode. Still an experimental feature in the alpha version. You can try it out if you want to. But it's a great feature. I hope it gets implemented at some point. I do rely on it a lot, but in this case, right, for example, the sculpt over here is actually using sculpt vertex colors. So if I go into sculpt mode and set it to vertex, actually, let me keep this on object. I can just go over here, go to solid. This is actually sculpted vertex colors. So in sculpt mode, I have like a paintbrush, and I can just paint on top here in sculpt mode on all of these tiny vertices all over the place. It has a much better performance, and it actually works really well. I'm gonna undo this though. But it still has problems. So if you're using it, be aware that there's bugs and all the usual shenanigans. There was a question about tension maps. To be honest, I don't know what that is. It's not a terminology used in Blender. Maybe it's maybe you can describe what it actually is. The old rig you might... no. Well. Let's actually add another loop over here. Disable snapping. Also another sip. I'm not happy with where the mouth is going right now. Maybe I can just extrude this manually. Oh, I should enable snapping again. Ooh. Okay. So I can maybe have like 3 loops up here. I need 4 loops down here. There's no way around it. Maybe someone else can help about tension maps. Maybe someone knows what that means exactly. I'm a bit at a loss right now. I'm sorry. Question is, can I get rid of this edge loop? Yeah, for characters, try to use quads. Sometimes n-gons are okay, but you need to hide them somewhere where they cannot be seen. But for static objects like hard surface characters, robots, that sort of stuff, just go crazy as long as it doesn't cause any problems in the rendering. Will be these kind of live streamings more common? I would love to do this more commonly. Right now, it's a bit improvised, a bit more like I just basically offered to do this because I was just recording videos anyway every week and uploading them on the Blender Cloud. If you're interested in more, like you can just on the Blender Cloud in Films, you can go to Sprite Fright, and in there's a section called Production Lessons. And I actually uploaded everything I did for the working on the regular snail. It's very much unedited. It's almost like a live stream, but it wasn't live. But I wanted to do this live so I can actually combine this a bit more with Q&A and have a bit more social interaction while I'm just working all the time. Yes. Awesome. I'm not sure about this area over here. I would love to have this a bit differently. Let's see, what if I do it like this? I mean, this is pretty much the same as what I already had. I think this is the same. Maybe not. This should be fine. Yes. Yes. What project management software do you use? Usually we're keeping our projects online, all of our files through SVN, which is pretty much just hosted on the Blender Cloud. You can also make your own projects on the Blender Cloud and get a full SVN repository. So that's how we manage our production files and share them. In terms of asset and shot tracking, we used to, in previous projects, use we used to use Attract, which is also a service on the Blender Cloud. But for this project, we're trying out a different software right now called Kitsu, which is also open source, and using that to just kind of manage each other and the assets that we're making. Maybe I should. Yes. No. It's so tricky. The quad remeasure is honestly impressive. I agree. It's the best. I mean, it's a free quad remeasure in Blender. It's a great option. It can be. It can have a bit of a mind of its own sometimes, though. If you're talking about the quad remeasure that is included in Blender by default. At this point, I'm getting like kind of high enough resolution that it makes sense to sometimes switch into sculpt mode and use the slide relax brush or like just grab brushes. But yeah, this is, I don't like this diamond over here. This thing. There's like a a 3-pole and a 5-pole right next to each other. And this is just dirty. It's like, I don't like it. It's kind of unnecessary. I would love to just merge it and just kind of get rid of it. Why? No, this is not good. I think the only way of how I can get rid of this is to add more loops up here, and it's not ideal. I could try it. I'm losing control over here. What am I doing? I don't think this is gonna work like this. Yeah, this is terrible. Okay. I'm just gonna get rid of this again. Let's see. Maybe I can. Something like this. Oh, wow. How did this happen? Oh, there too. These should be together. Just waiting for Retopo AI. I think that's the way to that it's going to move forward. Like, I'm doing a lot of manual work and just playing around, but the way how I see it is eventually it's going to get more automated. That doesn't mean that there's no user input anymore. It's just that we're going to define edge flow and very specific edge count and loop counts ourselves, but the rest could be handled automatically. How do you make the Blender interface so rounded? Hold on. I can show you. It's essentially in the preferences in themes. You got the user interface tab over here, and there's all of these tabs which you can just open up, and they define all the colors, but also the roundness. So if you go in here, there's roundness sliders all over the place. So if you slide these, by default, I think they're like on 0.2 or something. I set all of them to 75%. So if you go through all of these, you can also define the interface color. I set it to be green. You can just copy and paste the values as well and go through all of these tabs individually. It's a bit tedious. And then you have everything more rounded and turquoise, like I have it. Other than that, it's just the default theme. I think I could be happy with this. Screw it. I'm also going to add a subdivision surface modifier. Subdivide this 2 times. Just so I can get a bit of a better impression. Yes. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. I see that there's also conversations going on between between you guys, so I'm just gonna leave you to it. I'm still gonna look at the chat from time to time. This is actually, now that I think about it, it's actually interesting that my plan was for 2020 for the Blender conference, if it would have happened properly, not just online. I wanted to make a on the Blender conference in 2019, I did a live sculpting session where I just sculpted redesigned Suzanne in an hour. And I actually wanted to do something similar for the 2020 Blender conference and just do a live retopology session where I retopologize Suzanne for an hour. This is getting very close to that, at least. I'm pretty happy with doing this live right now. Maybe I'm still going to do it. Maybe I'm still going to do a live retopology session on at the next Blender conference. I would love to do that. Or maybe another sculpting session. There's always something new to show about sculpt mode. Yes. Down here, it's still a bit of a mess. I'm going to handle that another time. I want to focus on the mouth. The mouth doesn't need to be perfect. Nothing over here needs to be really perfect. It just needs to follow the right shapes. Actually, let me try this. Huh. Wait. Let's fill this. Oh my god, I figured it out. Nice. Here we go. Now I'm gonna split this in two and subdivide it. This is a neat little trick that I like to do. This sort of two pole over here, like a vertex with two connected edges, because then if I add an edge loop over here on the lips, it just goes around completely. I'd like to also still adjust parts over here, to be honest. I'd like to have a bit more of a ring going around here. Okay, that's good enough. And then let's just merge these two like this. Now I got this also a bit more set up. Will the groups improved in Blender? Huh. I don't know what you mean with groups, to be honest. Is it like, oh, you mean as in like the 2.7 terminology, which is now it's called collections. I guess. I think the collections can still use a lot of improvements. It never ends. Go. Not really happy about this solution over here. Maybe it's fine. This is gonna be tricky. Jesus. There we go. Maybe I can do it like this with a little arch over here. Eventually, I'm gonna mirror the other side around, but I don't want to do it now because it's not fully symmetrical. I just want to keep this a bit manageable right now by just working on one side. There we go. I think this is looking fine. I don't like this vertex over here. This is terrible. Oh no. 6 connected edges? No way. Maybe How do I solve this? How do I solve this? Maybe I can slide this. No. Oh yeah, it's two shrink wrap modifiers. So this I set this up originally. First of all, I start with a shrink wrap modifier to just have everything always automatically snap to the sculpt. But I set up another shrink wrap modifier. The second one is not visible in edit mode. And what this one does is it just does the same thing again, but it creates a bit of an offset so that the object is actually hovering a bit over the sculpt instead of intersecting with it. And the reason I added that is just so I can go into sculpt mode and actually also tweak some edges a bit over here. So that's it's sometimes a bit useful. I like to use it do it this way sometimes. Back to this mess. Actually, maybe this is fine. I'm going to subdivide this again. I think this is fine. There's a few poles in here, but it's all pretty much visible. So I don't mind this. I'm not going to allow the subdivision surface modifier in edit mode because it messes with what I can actually see. Okay. I got the mouth, kinda. Got it kinda there. It's just the general construct of the mouth. Let's actually continue with the little stalks over here of the eyes. It's interesting when I compare this to the regular snail. What I did over here is for the regular snail. Do I have it open actually? Actually, let's open it up. I want to go into here's all of the characters. So if I go into snail.modeling.blend, this is the regular snail. And over here, what I did over here is I actually have these parts merged. The eyelids, the little stick part of the eyes, and the rest of the body. But that actually resulted in me not having a lot of loops in the eyes. And in the case of the chunky snail, I would like to not deal with this too much. You want more topology on the eye stem, so maybe this helps with the mouth. Yeah, I could add more loops. I think I'm gonna gradually increase it as I need it. Oh, let's quickly disable the shrink wrap modifier for now, just so I can see what I'm doing here. And I'm gonna extrude this up. And I'm actually not. I'm going to keep the eyelids and the sticks over here separate as separate geometries, because then I don't have to deal with the limitation of how many loops can go into the eye. I don't want all of those loops to go back into the mouth and the body. It's just insane. I apply the shrink wrap modifier usually. I actually apply the shrink wrap modifier regularly, so I don't need to snap everything myself. It's a bit tedious to snap everything. So you can just go in here and say, select the modifier, Shift D, and Control A on one of them and apply it. And now everything should be nicely snapped to the sculpt. With the subdivide activated, the mesh is perfect. How much manual work must be done first? Among other things, retopology is also fundamental to optimize an object for 3D printing. I'm actually not sure about retopology for printing, to be honest, because if you remesh everything in a fairly high resolution with the voxel remesher, you get away with a lot, actually. You can, but for just regular retopology for characters, if you want, you can actually just leave it like this, really roughly, and we can duplicate the shrink wrap modifier again, put it on top of the subdivision surface modifier, and now it is essentially just wait. Oh no, it crashed. I am using the alpha version after all, so let's just Okay, I'm gonna go in here and recover autosave. 1604, that was 1 minute ago. Recover, oops, wrong file. Recover autosave. Snail, modeling.blend. Nope, also wrong file. Recover autosave. Snail chunky sculpting. Wait. Snail chunky modeling. 1416. What? That's weird. I think I lost a bit of work. That's fine. Okay, but usually I have autosave. If you find it in here, and I think it's file path. No, it's save and load. I have it set to every 3 minutes. You can even set it to every 2 minutes. What autosave is doing, I mean, it's not autosaving every 2 minutes constantly. It's not autosaving while you're in a mode. It's autosaving every time you switch between modes. I think that's how I understand it. So it's not going to constantly get like loading times in your workflow. Where did you save the recovering file path? By default, it's in temp, I think. So it should just be your temp folder. And that just works fine. Anyway, I can actually recommend if you have a question directly for me, you can just tag Blender Studio in the chat. Then I can see it more easily. Sometimes I see replies that are not meant for me. I have autosave set to 1 minute. That's very wise, actually. Or the other way is you just train yourself rigorously to save constantly. If you've ever worked in an alpha version of Blender, you know, you just save all the time just to be on the safe side. But yeah, I think this is enough resolution for the stock. But I'm gonna make the eyelets a separate mesh. I'm also relatively happy with the mouth. It doesn't need to be super clean, but if it needed to be animated and it would be in a resting pose, like completely straight, I would work on this more. I would not be satisfied with this. Now back to my nemesis down here. I wanted to have these two loops over here, nice and parallel, so I can capture this crease really nicely. And then down here, it's fanning out into nothingness. So that's gonna be a bit tricky. I need to add a loop down here anyway, because I want to capture this bulge here a bit more. So this is helping me right now, actually. So I can split the face over here with J. Oh, now before I forget, after it crashed, I think the screencast keys add-on was disabled. If you ever see that the hotkeys are no longer displayed, just let me know. I tend to forget about it a lot, and sometimes it's just disabling itself, which is really not nice. How do I do this? I think I can just add a loop here and then merge this one over here. Merge to last. I think this is nice. I'm just going to go to object mode, duplicate, and apply the shrink wrap modifier. And actually, let's toggle this to wires. Yeah, I should drink something. Oh yeah, hotkeys with similar to Maya. It's a bit tricky with following tutorials, to be honest. I can't really recommend it, but I know that William Rainish, he created and really established the industry compatible key map in Blender, which is actually pretty solid, to be honest. I like it. I like the idea of it. I think it's a bit bare bones, but it leaves a lot of room for customization. So if you know Blender and you know another software like Maya, Softimage, 3ds Max, or Houdini, any other software that you're working in, and you're kind of familiar with both, you can also switch to the industry compatible key map and use that and make it a bit of your own. Especially if you're switching a lot between different sets of softwares, it's actually really helpful to just be able to switch between them and have a similar key map. I see a question. Check it. If you restart the computer, the crashing. Oh yeah, the rename to Blender 1 and the Blender 2, Blend 3, and Blend 4 files, they're good. They're a way of recovering your work, but it's actually, I mean, as far as I know, they're not autosave files. They are like every time you save, you save on your blend file, and if you save again, it copies what used to be the blend file to the blend 1 file, and you save on the blend on the regular blend file. So you just have multiple versions as a backup, but it doesn't autosave on it, as far as I know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm not sure, but it is a bit sad that if Blender, not just Blender crashes, but your computer crashes or freezes, your autosave is also just gone. Like the moment you restart your computer, it's over. The temp files are deleted, and you can't recover your Blender session. There we go. Maybe I can do something like this. Maybe, yeah. Actually, I think I can do this. Yes. Oh God. Oh, I have set it to wire again. Damn it. Yeah, it's actually super, like, at least my experience with Maya and working in Maya and Softimage was actually that it's also crashing a lot. I was pretty surprised, but I mean, to be fair, every software is crashing constantly. I don't, unless it's like a really simple software, like 3D applications are very complicated, very complex. If you're not crashing it, then maybe something is wrong with the software. Hello. Oh my God, 145 people watching. That's amazing. There we go. And again, for anyone who didn't, like I mentioned it before, I'm not playing any music or anything, because you could just put up some music yourself. I'm a bit afraid of, like, if I'm listening to music constantly, that I'm like getting into a bit of a Zen state, just relaxing and not even commentating much anymore. The soundtrack I'm listening to right now is just my own commentary. It's a bit less distracting. Or it's just as distracting, I would say, probably. Thank you. And again, if you have any questions, just let me know. Tag me in the comments, or like Blender Studio in the comments, and then I can see it easily. Canada in the house. Wow. What's the time on your end right now? Yes. Let's see. I'm just going over with the slide relax brush, relaxing the geometry a bit, shifting it around so everything is a bit more nice and smooth. Just a bit. I love this brush. So good. Okay. This is actually super nice. So I'm pretty happy with this, to be honest. This is already like a really nice general edge flow. Everything is quads. The poles are not really in the way that much. Yes, I think this is kind of nice. I would like to add more geometry for creases now. That is the general challenge. Once I question. I don't know. Sorry. Where are you from? From Germany originally? But I've been living in Amsterdam now for 3.5 years, I think. Still haven't learned a single bit of Dutch. But in my defense, German is so similar that you can kind of get away with it. You can basically read stuff still. It's not too different. You can learn the basics and then you kind of get around stuff. But yeah, like I mentioned, I have a general edge flow right now. Like this edge right now, it follows the crease over here pretty nicely. And the two face loops right next to it are also following it most of the way. This is what I wanted. The same I have pretty much going on over here. The crease over here goes all the way up until this point, and this is where the edge loops are also going into other directions. Same thing over here. It's matching up with these two creases. And same thing here. The two loops are matching up with the creases over here. And I have, again, the same thing over here. Not perfect, actually. I would like to tweak this a bit. I want to have this edge right here, following the crease. Two edges to kind of neighbor it so that the shape doesn't get lost or smudged around. I'm going to add another loop right here just so I can get a bit more resolution on the chin. And I'm actually going to duplicate and apply the shrink wrap modifier again. And then over here with the slide relax brush, I'm just going to sculpt over it and nudge things around. And it should just snap back to it without problems. Like that. There we go. Back to edit mode, setting display back to textured. Again, that is the option over here in the object tab under viewport display. You can set it to show up as a wire or as the regular textured object. What's the purpose of the mesh you're creating? This is supposed to be the actual retopology for the production. So we're gonna use this. The mesh underneath is the sculpt. It has like an insane resolution. Like not insane, but we can't use this for production. And the one that I'm building right now is meant to be able to have modifiers like a subdivision surface modifier, UVs, shading, and can actually be rigged. It's modeled in post though, because this character is only appearing in one single shot, and I don't want to go through the effort to first T-pose it and then retopologize it, and then we're getting back to the pose. I'm watching because you're Blender on because you're Blender on Linux. If you're using Maya on Windows, then I'm not gonna join. Yeah, I actually like using using Blender on Linux. Actually, sometimes has a bit of advantages, but it should be pretty much the same on Windows. Privately, I'm using Blender on Windows. On my Windows laptop, but at work we're all using Linux because open source. Everything we do and everything we use is open source, which is fantastic because then we can get to share all the files and everyone can just immediately open them up without buying a license to anything first. Yes, I wanted to add creases. So the most tricky one is probably going to be this one. Is Blender sculpting good enough for production? Better than ever, I would say. Ever since 2.80, there have been like in every single version more and more improvements, more tools, and sculpt mode has become a better tool in combination with edit mode and with like retopology, and it's it's really great. There's always things to improve, of course, but I would say for productions, I don't see any reason not to do it unless you're really going for like really high poly, insane creatures or something where you sculpt in the pores and everything. But if you keep the poly count relatively low for stylized creations, or just because you want to create all the details later in a texturing software, I would say the sculpting tools in Blender are completely solid. Like you can't really do anything wrong with it. Thank you. Awesome. Okay. Let's actually do the creases. Here we go. I am going to try this. I'm going to bevel this, and with S, I hit S, and then I can add more segments while I'm beveling. So I'm just going to add one. Press A to go back to the width. And I'm going to leave it like that. And this just gives me a bit more loops over here to capture this crease. I can fan this out a bit more. Like that. But the thing is, over here, the crease is already disappearing. So I'm thinking of maybe sliding these two back here and just merging these two triangles, and then the crease is really just completely disappearing over here. Maybe like this, but that might be a bit, it might create too much stretching and pinching. I followed the stylized character workflow from Blender Cloud, but there's no rigging workflow tutorial. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's actually no plan of adding rigging or animation to the stylized character workflow course. That was never within the scope, and the only thing that we wanted to add is maybe add like animation tutorials for it, since it is fully rigged and you can just download it and try it out. But the scope of the stylized character workflow course that I did on the Blender Cloud is really just to show you the production workflow that we're using to create characters in the Blender Studio. That goes from like the initial conceptualization to then sculpting and retopology, and then eventually I would like to add more chapters on UV unwrapping, surfacing, and then just posing and presenting the character. But unfortunately, I didn't get any time for it yet. It's been on my to-do list for a while, but this is what I'm working on right now. I'm mainly working for the projects on the Blender for the Blender Studio, and in this case, right now it's the latest Open Movie project. This has precedence. Retopology is good. The next step should be geometry nodes. I should play around with those more. Geometry nodes are really nice. Right now, we're already playing around with them a lot, testing them, mainly for set dressing. That was the main target for geometry nodes as an initial implementation, that scattering things around. That's what the geometry nodes are really great for. But more functionality is going to be added, and it's going to be more useful for more things. Would love more videos on UV unwrapping and normal maps. Me too. I would love to do that. If you're interested, there's like a really good tutorial by Daniel Bystedt on YouTube on UV unwrapping. That actually shows you a lot on what you can do in Blender. It's freely available. You can just watch it. Just adding more loops over here. I can just, again, duplicate and apply the shrink wrap modifier to snap all of this immediately. And I can also just go into sculpt mode and with a slight relax brush, just relax all of this a little bit. But what I am noticing already again is I'm running out of geometry. I don't like how much gets accumulated over here. I want to add more. So how do I do this in the best way? I think I'm gonna merge these faces again so I can just man. There's also retopology tutorials from Daniel. Really? Oh, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, definitely check out his channel, to be honest. He does some really great tutorials, but also demos. And if you're more interested in the new sculpting tools and sculpting workflows, like also different sculpting workflows from mine, I think Pablo Dobaro's live streams are amazing. They're also really chill. You can just hop in and check out what he's doing at the time. He's doing it very regularly. But, oh God. I messed up. Be careful when you have snapping enabled. Nudge it back. There we go. Yeah, please do check out their videos. I would love there to be more sculpting tutorials, to be honest, but I do understand the hesitation because there's always new tools and the interface changes and everything constantly changes. It's hard to make tutorials because they're going to get outdated really soon, always. But I think it's still worth it. I'm going to maybe, if I get time for it, I would love to make like some sculpting tutorials that just outline the latest features, and it could be maybe more of a live document, like something that gets updated regularly. It's like described, maybe it could be in a written form. That would be easier to manage. And then like just like a tutorial style documentation for Blender sculpting and in general would be nice. And then if you read through it, it should be easy to see an up-to-date version of it, I think. Maybe one day. Okay. Oh boy. It's actually kind of tricky. Vertically, I don't have a lot of loops available here, but horizontally, I just keep adding them. This is not going to end well. Maybe it's going to work. And again, if you have questions for me, just tag Blender Studio. Then I can immediately see the question being asked. That way I can focus a bit more on what I'm doing right here. And if I see like an orange label pop up in the chat, I immediately know, oh, someone wants to know something. Yes. I'm going to add another loop over here. Again, duplicate and apply the shrink wrap. Smooth this out a bit more. Nudge things around. Oh, yes. I did not plan to retopologize all of this while being an Eevee. I did not think it could work with the current version that I'm using, which is a bit broken. It's a bit of an older alpha version, but some tools that I'm using and some custom UI elements are still working in here. I need to fix something. But yeah, this is actually kind of nice. And it's still all pretty visible. Okay. Okay, okay. So I have this crease. I have this crease. I need to capture this crease as well. Which, I mean, I don't mind, actually. I don't mind if the loops are going down here. I could actually use this a lot. I can slide this one up and have this one be on the right on the crease, right there. And then I can slide this one up. Then I have 2 loops for the bulge, which should be perfect amount to capture that shape. Like that. Seems to be looking good. I'm gonna nudge these a bit closer together to capture that crease. But right now I'm mainly bothering about, like, thinking about getting all the topology I need in here. Not necessarily the exact placement. I would do the really fine-tuned placement once I applied the shrink wrap modifier. But this is already looking nice. What's going on over here? Oh no. Imagine how cool it would be to draw topology on a surface in grease pencil and then convert it to edges automatically. That's actually sort of a thing. There's like a I forgot the name of the add-on, but there's a free add-on going around where you can still use annotation lines. You can just kind of draw annotation lines, and then it's going to convert it into loops. I wish that would be fully supported. I don't think it would be too difficult because, I mean, grease pencil lines are, in the end, edges anyway. Like, you can just convert it to edges. But yes, I do agree that there's like plenty of retopology. B surfaces, thank you. Exactly, that's the add-on. I don't know if it's still working for 2.8. It's been a while since I tried it out. But you can check it out and see if it's actually working. I hope it is. I really hope so. So many great add-ons out there. So if you're lacking any sort of thing in your workflow, there's a good chance that there's an add-on floating around. Maybe for free, maybe paid, but usually the paid ones are not that expensive. And you can just grab it and install it. The community is great. It's so much support going on. There we go. Smoothing this out. Ah, Jesus. Oh man. This is such a I don't like how this looks, but it's fine enough. How will you add in the depth of the back front divide when you're happy with the topology? Oh yeah, I'm gonna do that manually, but there's a bit of a trick I can use. I'm gonna get that to that point very soon now, I think. First, I gotta get all the rest of the creases in here, and then I need to get the other side back, and then I can do it. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to select this edge over here for that divide crease, like this. And let's actually bevel it. I'm going to disable snapping, and I'm going to bevel it. Again, press S for more segments. Do one segment, and then with A, I can change the width a bit more. If you want to use the bevel tool, there's also all of these options up here. But if you're interested in the shortcut while beveling something, at the bottom, at the status bar, you can see all of the shortcuts being highlighted. It's a bit of a lot of text to read, but it's really helpful. So now I have this over here. I have these extra loops, and these are gonna be wonderful. Great help. But they don't go all the way up here. That's the problem. I think I'm just gonna fade it out like this. I think that's fine. Something like this. Maybe I can just merge these two. No. Oh no. This is actually not a great idea. Let's actually... Okay. I'm gonna get my topology back. It was kind of like this. Yes. Yes. And that's kind of what I did. Like this. And I think I could just do this. It just fans out. It's not very pretty, but it works for now. Maybe I'll tweak it later. Free folder structure, unfinished project manager, add-on, Blender PM. Oh yeah, there's also other managers out there, add-ons for add-ons. When working on a character base mesh, do you begin with the changes in the flow of the loops? I don't quite know what you mean, but I do definitely, when I start out with a retopology, I pay close attention to the edge flow. So where my loops are going and where they're going to end is pivotal. I would say it's the most important part about retopology, especially if you plan to animate it. If it's not going to be animated, then you don't really need to bother. Then it's just extra work. Or at least if you're subdividing it, then edge flow is also really important. But yeah, this should be enough to get that crease in there. And apart from that, this is already pretty far. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to split this edge over here. So I'm going to use the rip tool, or rip with V. And then I have the two sides separated again of the lips. The reason why I had them merged is so they would always have the same amount of loops, even though it's not really that big of a deal right now if they don't, because the character's not going to animate much. When working on a, that's the same question. Sorry. To be honest, I'm gonna leave this like this for right now. I'm gonna quickly go to the bathroom, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay. To be honest, I should have a BRB sign to stick in front of the camera, or just like, I don't know, put the mic up and have like a sticker, BRB, toilet break. Ah, thank you. Yeah, I'm back. Okay. So I am pretty happy with where this is right now. I think some of this stuff could be tweaked a bit more, but generally, I'm fine with where this is. So the next step would be to get the other side back. So I'm gonna just set the 3D cursor to, oh, I don't have it visible. So I'm gonna set the 3D cursor to roughly about where the center is. I'm gonna turn snapping off. And I'm going to duplicate this. Wait, first set the pivot to be the 3D cursor. And I'm going to Shift D duplicate this. Right click to get to cancel out of moving it. And then Control M along the x-axis. Yeah, let's just do it like this. And now I have this flipped. I'm going to press Shift N to recalculate the normals because they were also flipped. And then I'm just going to move this in here like this, sort of. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate this into its own object. And now I will just maybe use the snake hook brush and just morph this over here. I'm going to also disable the shrink wrap modifiers for this. So I'm just going to morph this so that it kind of aligns again. If I didn't get your question, just write it again. Tag me in the chat. Sorry if I missed it. But yes, the reason why I'm using the snake hook brush is because it's following the rotation of my stroke a little bit, which makes it a bit easier to move this stuff around. There we go. Kind of like this. And I can see kind of where I put the loops, where they are supposed to be, and I can just nudge it around. What was the name of the other guy on the YouTube? David something. Daniel Bystedt. I can just write it in the or wait. If I go to actually I can just like Daniel Bystedt. So you can just Google him and go to his art station, or in this case the YouTube channel. And yeah, thanks for writing it in the comments. And here you have like some videos from him, really great demos of using Blender for really great projects, just showing off what you could do. And there's also a UV mapping tutorial over here and other stuff. So also retopology tutorials, which is great. So check that out. Oh my God. I need to keep drinking. So I have this pretty much at the right spot. Everything is there. So what I could now do is I could merge this back with the other object. And let's just select these two edge loops over here, these two sides. And with loop tools, I can bridge. And then I can oh, damn it. I can select this whole edge, this loop going around, and just slide it over, and it's automatically going to merge because I have auto merge editing on. And now this should work. Now, of course, the other side still needs to be tweaked. It's not perfect, but I'm also hesitant on applying the shrink wrap yet. I don't think that's a good idea. I still would like to nudge this into the right positions. What you could also do instead of using sculpt mode is use the tweak tool or just click and dragging. And I'm going to enable proportional editing. And then if I click and drag, and with the brackets keys, I can actually reduce the size of proportional editing a lot. And then it is a bit like using a brush. That's like an alternative if you want to use it, do this in edit mode. I like to do it this way. Oh God. There we go. Oh boy. Actually, I'm going to enable snapping for this because it's actually gaining some distance over here and I don't want that. I want it to be actually on the surface like that. That's the way to go. Okay. Moving stuff around a little bit. Like that. Just tweaking things. Now I have subdivision. I have the modifier off right now because I'm focusing more on the low, on the base version. Okay, wait. This is gonna be tricky. The mouth. This needs a lot of cleanup. Oh yeah, it's the sculpt underneath. I have the retopology as an object right here, so you can just look at it here. And in edit mode, I toggled the option hidden wire, so it's actually hiding the faces and just showing you the cage, the wires, and but still obscuring the wires behind it. It's not like going into wireframe mode. So that's actually a really good overlay that's mainly used for retopology, I think, because it enables you to show your sculpt underneath and work on the retopology at the same time. I can also still enable X-ray to show the geometry behind, like this, and just really see everything that I'm doing. Oh boy. Oh man. Still kind of tricky. Okay, okay. So I'm going to enable snapping and proportional editing again. So proportional editing along connected only. I like to use that because I don't want to accidentally move something that's not even connected. Okay, and mainly I want to, like right now, here I did a mistake, like I aligned these edges over here with a crease, but it's actually one loop lower. I want to have this matching up in a symmetrical way. That's why I didn't even work on the other side. I had it deleted, just so once I'm happy with the overall topology, I can just duplicate it and copy it to the other side, which is a little bit of a messy way of doing it. But since this is a bit of a messy workflow, since I'm retopologizing in this thing in pose, it's fine. Kind of like this. This needs to be heavily cleaned up, but oh, and I actually never finished this part. Is there? Oh, there's still faces here. Okay, nice. Also, you might have noticed that I'm actually not deleting faces. I'm usually merging them. So if I have like two faces over here, and I want to have this as an open area to define again, you could delete the faces, and then remodel this. But then it's a hole, and you can see through. So it's a bit of a limitation with how the viewport works. What I generally like to do is to just merge the faces with F, and then with the knife tool, I can go in and cut this up further. kind of like this. Yes, there we go. This needs to be merged. I'm using J for this. J, and there we go. Clean topology. And now also on both sides. So what I would like to do now is to actually apply this shrink wrap modifier. So I'm duplicating it, applying it, and then going back into sculpt mode. Switch back to wire. And then with the slide relax brush, I can redistribute the topology in a way that makes sense. And this means we have it most of the way. I remember Mike asking the question in the chat how I go about and like getting these creases really out there, getting like these forms exactly how they're in the sculpt. And sometimes it's about having enough loops there to actually support it, but you need to do a bit of manual modeling, manual tweaking around afterwards. But again, I'm going to show you a trick in a moment on how to save time doing that. I mean, this is already a good trick of using the slide relax brush, going over it and smoothing over everything, nudging it. But there's another thing you can do. There we go. Nice and clean. Even distribution in a retopology is making me so happy. There we go. Okay, I'm going to smooth this out a bit. Oh boy, this is a hole. Ah, that makes sense. Yes. I left this open. Yes. Like this. Then I nudge the mouth a bit more towards this side over here. Okay. Oh boy, this is really bright. Sorry, everyone. To prevent this, I'm actually going to add a material, to be honest. This is not nice. I'm gonna make this kind of dark gray. Let's make it like a nice pink. Screw it. Like a more of a purple. Yeah, let's move it more towards rose colors. This is nicer. And this is just for the case that I'm actually going into sculpt mode. Just so it's not shining into my face and also your faces. It's not nice. Do you bake normals on this or not? No, I'm not gonna bake normal maps, like that sort of thing. I want to capture this model with the retopology, so you can just subdivide it and you have everything in there, but all the forms and fine shapes and everything. It's just a bit cleaner. I like that sort of thing. It also forces you to make a better topology. But you could bake things in if you wanted to. For more complex characters, that's actually a really nice workflow. But because this character is actually so simple, I don't mind to just retopologize this like this. Okay. I think I'm pretty happy with this. how it looks. So I am going to use the so first of all, I'm gonna duplicate and apply the first shrink wrap again. Oh yeah, and I'm gonna disable the second one for now. So now we have this object over here. Oh, it doesn't work like that. So let's actually go out of Eevee for a moment. So this is the object I have, and I'm going to disable wireframes for a moment as well. And if I subdivide this, we have the general shape here. Everything is kind of there, everything is central, but oh God, what happened here? Jesus, that's not supposed to happen. Let's move this one back. Hello, little guy. Let's apply the shrink wrap modifier again. Okay, so this is pretty much most of the way there. But, sorry. There's some finer shapes we want to capture with this. And as long as we have the general topology right there where we need it, I'm actually going to tweak this a bit more. Not happy with this yet. But yeah, like I'm saying, you should get everything like most of the way there. But what is kind of inherent to making a retopology, what you're often going to face is the moment you start to subdivide it, you're going to lose the shapes and the volumes that you actually wanted to get. You can't quite get it 100% there unless you really start to fine tweak it and put a lot of extra effort into it. But damn it. The loops don't quite align here. But yeah, you get it most of the way there, but you can get the details from the sculpt back without modifying the topology, without sacrificing anything on how clean you modeled this. And that is actually a little trick. Okay. The reason why I retopologized this character in so someone asked why I retopologized the character in pose. This character is a bit of an exception. Earlier in the stream I talked about other characters and how we T-pose them before going into retopology, like the main character Ellie, the other teenagers, and also the regular snail, because these are posed in various situations. But for the chunky snail, that one is a bit of an exception because we only see that character in one shot. So I'm doing this as fast as possible and T-posing this character, like getting it into a neutral pose and then retopologizing it and then putting an extensive rig on it and then getting it back into the pose that I originally sculpted just for one shot is a bit overkill. So instead, I'm just retopologizing it in pose. We are going to put a very minimal rig on it for bare minimum of movement, and that's about it. It saves us a lot of time, and yeah, in a production, you just need to find ways of cutting corners wherever you can. But yeah, I want right now to tweak this a bit more. I'm going to get back to the getting the shapes. I don't want to rush this, just to explain what I'm going to do. So I'm going to focus a bit more on getting the retopology where I want it to be. Like that. That's it. I think I'm pretty... this should be fine now. Maybe. Maybe. Yes. Is it mostly going to be animated with shape keys? Could be. I mean, we could even slap bones on the rig just to control shape keys. That's also a valid solution. We'll see. I think there's multiple ways of doing it. Could also be that we just have simple bones for deforming the character, causing squash and stretch, and like just very minimal things. No spoilers again. I'm not going to talk about how this character is going to appear in the movie, how exactly it's going to be used. Only that it's only appearing in one shot, or like 1.5 shots. Which is the justification why I'm making this quick and dirty workflow. Just retopologizing it in pose. But I think this is pretty much there. So I'm actually going to, let's isolate this. So if I add the subdivision surface modifier, I'm like getting a lot of the way there, but the volumes are getting a bit lost. The creases are getting lost. It's just not quite the shape of the sculpt. And we want to have this look exactly like the sculpt. So what do we do? Oh man, I found another thing to tweak. It's never gonna end. It's never gonna end. Okay. Let's not sidetrack again. So what I'm gonna do is, let's say you have the subdivision surface and you duplicate the shrink wrap that's snapping everything back to the sculpt and put it on top of the subdivision surface modifier. And now we get what we want. But this is not something we can just keep on here. It's not going to work. Which version of Blender? I'm using the latest alpha version. You can see it down here in the corner, right under my face. Someone called it. I'm going to use the multires and apply base. That's what I was getting at. So I want to have this in the in the base topology. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to disable the subdivision surface modifier for now. I'm going to get rid of this. And let's apply the shrink wrap modifier one last time over here. And then I'm going to add a multi-resolution modifier. And this is typically used for sculpting. So I can subdivide the model again, like with the subdivision surface modifier. And the shrink wrap is on top over here. And it's shrink wrapping everything back to the sculpt. But what the advantage now is with the multi-res modifier is I can apply the shrink wrap like that, Control A, and now I have this information in the upper subdivisions of the model. Unfortunately, we don't have it in the base resolution yet. So the way to do this is, let's see. Usually when you have details in the upper subdivisions and you want to also work with the lowest resolution, the base resolution, they are actually kept apart. The modifiers are not adjusting your lowest resolution unless you specifically apply them. So in this case, what we can do is we have the details in the higher resolutions, and we want to have the lowest result represent those details as well. We can click on this button over here, which is called, I'm going to save, which is called Apply Base. And now if I click it, you can see how much it changed. So it's trying to counteract the loss of volume and the loss of creases and all of your shapes on the lowest resolution. So now if I just subdivide it with the subdivision surface modifier, it's actually capturing the original volumes, if I switch between them, much more closely. It's gaining a bit of volume. It's like overcompensating a little bit, but it's getting me more where I want it to be. In this case, I can just now delete the multi-res modifier and keep working. But the ability that I lost right now is to work on this basically while snapping. That's not going to be a thing anymore. If I snap it back, then I basically reverted to the same problems I had before, where I lose volume and I lose the creases. So the sculpt right now is only ever going to be used as a guide, not as a surface to snap on. So I can enable the subdivision surface modifier for edit mode and on cage, and I could tweak this more now. I can also go into sculpt mode and switch the object type to wire. And I can tweak it as well. So now I can use the grab brush to just kind of nudge this a bit around and get the original volumes I actually want to have. There's some questions. Also German questions. So the question is if what I'm doing right now is for a short film, and for when is it planned? The short film is planned to release later this year. It's starting really. The production is really starting right now. So we're working on the actual shots or getting close to it, and all the characters are almost done. This is one of the last ones. And yeah, the short film is called Sprite Fright. You can actually check it out on the Blender Cloud. So if you go on the Blender Cloud, there's it's a bit slow. There's like the banner for Sprite Fright, and you can just check out the project. There's plenty of other videos on there, and you can check out all the characters that we made and the entire progression of making them. Basically, everything that we started working on back in June, it's all online, so you can just check it out. But yes, let's not digress any further. The chunky snail is, I would say, close to done. The only thing I would still like to add maybe is a little bit of an inner mouth, even though just the bare minimum to define the lips a bit more. But yes. Will you be working on after the characters are done on what? Like, I mean, if once the characters are done, the most likely tasks are environment, so set dressing and environment assets, the asset library that we're going to use for like plants and rocks and all kinds of things. That's basically what happened during spring. Eventually the characters were done, and then I was working on environment assets and set dressing. And the same is probably going to apply here. So I would love to make more streams. If not for props and environments for the movie, then maybe for entirely different things. I could, for example, just reserve a couple hours or a few hours working on something completely different. It could also be a thing. I could see it go different ways, depending on how much time we have, how much pressure is on the project. But whatever I could do live, I should do it. I think that's actually a really nice thing. Or at least, if I'm not doing it live, I could at least record the process and just upload what I'm doing. Okay. So if I'm now comparing this, I'm actually going to add, if I'm flicking between the two collections, the Retopology and the Sculpt right now, and I have it in Eevee, it's not including the lights that I have, which is the third collection over here, actually a sub-collection within. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to drag this and move it to the other collections, but I'm going to hold Control to link it. So now this collection also exists, not a duplication, but the exact same collection exists also in the other collections. Okay. Well. This is already getting pretty far, at least for the body. The like the mouth needs to be defined more. We're missing the eyelids. We're missing the shell. But here's the thing. I would like to get the shell from somewhere else. So this is the current like rough model, but I would like to get the if I open another file, the snail. Where is it? The regular snail. Snail.modeling. There we go. The regular snail, which is already retopologized. I can just copy this object because I'm lazy. So I can just select it, Control C, and go back to the other version. And over here, just go Control V. And now I have this over here. I'm going to set the origin, which is also over here, just like set origin to geometry. And now I can pose this a bit more. I'm going to copy the materials from over here just so it's the same color. And actually, let's just also flat shade it. Screw it. Okay, I do want this shell to look pretty much exactly the same as this one. That's not going to be easy. Takes a bit of time, but it's mainly just about morphing it around. Will you make all props for the environment, or will you reuse assets from them in the market? Generally, we're not buying assets. The idea is to make everything ourselves and open source, or at least use other open source software and material, just so we not just we own everything, but we can set the license to be CC BY, Creative Commons, and we can just share it, and everyone can use the same assets we made and we're using, which is just it's making everything more open. So I'm not going to be the only one making props, but there's a lot of props, so I'm going to make a lot of props. So let's grab all of this and start to morph it into the same shape as the other shell. Oh, there's also another question. In retrospect, looking at the shape, wouldn't it have been easier to merge 3 spheres and squish them down a little already in low poly and take it from there instead of sculpting and retopo? Yes, I could have done that, but I wanted to make everything from scratch. There's always time-saving methods, and if I could have done that, I could also have used existing characters as a base mesh, maybe the other snail, and just started from there. But I wanted to give you a whole workflow with this. And yeah, Control C and Control V, you can pretty much copy and paste everything, anything in Blender. Point at a collection in the outliner. Control C, go to another blend file. Control V, you have the collection. It's pretty much working all across the board. As I'm new to Blender, do you have some suggestions on tutorials for teachers that teach us how to deal with outliner? The outliner, oh, I don't know, to be honest. The outliner changed quite a bit in recent versions, so I don't know how up to date the tutorials are. I hope they are. Hiding, unhiding things, and the very confusing linking part of it. I'm not talking just linking character. Yeah, sometimes you mean in the outliner? Yes, I mean it's kind of interesting with the outliner because there's like plenty of symbols. I would say out of all of these, the only ones you really need to use theoretically are these two, the check mark and the eye. The eye is just hiding and showing something, so you can just select something in the viewport, press H, and then press Alt-H in the viewport to unhide everything. So it's very loose. It's very fast. It's meant to be used very fluidly. The checkmark, on the other hand, is for collections, and it's much more permanently. Like you checkmark something, and it's not calculated, it's not drawn, it's not shown in the viewport, it's not even shown in rendering. It's just completely gone unless you checkmark it again. It's called excluding, and these sorts of toggles are pretty much just for your current file, for your current view layer. So you can make multiple view layers and have different visibility setups in there for rendering or for your viewport. The other ones in here, the other toggles over here are a bit more corner case, or if you want to have a bit more fine control. Selectability is pretty straightforward. You unmark something as selectable, and you cannot select it anymore, except for in the outliner. Then there's viewport, disable in the viewport, which sounds pretty much like exactly the same thing as hiding something. And in a way it is. The difference is it's doing basically the same thing, but this is throughout all files. Like if you're linking something, if you're referencing something to another blend file, then this little display icon is what's going to override we're going to trump all other visibility toggles for the viewport. If the display toggle is disabled, it's going to be disabled in the viewport for any viewport, anywhere, throughout the entire blend file, throughout all other blend files. And the same thing goes for the camera. Same principle. You uncheck it, it's just disabled for rendering throughout the entire blend file. If you link it or append it to other blend files, it's also disabled unless you uncheck it again. And the other two are for cycles. I'm not going to get into those. But I can recommend to just use these two if you want to keep it light. Maybe that was a bit fast explaining everything explaining the toggles and the outliner, but maybe it helps. Because it is confusing that there's multiple toggles that seem to do the same thing. But just be aware that you don't need to use all of them. Personally, and by default, I think only these two are really necessary. If there were any more questions, I might have missed them. I'm sorry. Sidetracked me a bit. Man, I would love to be able to finish this retopology in this stream. That would be amazing. I'm getting pretty far already. I mean, the only thing really missing, it's not a very complex character, so I could finish it. I think so. Would be nice. The shell is basically done. It's really just about morphing it into the right shape. The body needs a bit of tweaking, especially for the creases. And yeah. It's just, at some point, it's just a lot of tweaking. It's just fine-tuning. And maybe at that point, I'm going to call it a day. If it's just about, unless you really want to see it, if it's just a lot of nudging things around like crazy, it's not that insightful anymore. But I'm just going to keep going for a while. Everyone's freaking out about the Control-C, Control-V thing. Yeah, I would say there's even like another interesting thing you can add. There's a copy attributes menu as an add-on built into Blender. You could just enable this one, and then if you hit Control-C on an object, you get actually way more options. You can copy the location, rotation, scale to other objects, and all kinds of other things. It's just expanding the functionality even further. As I select the link and click down into collections, there are like 6 or 7 collections. What? Which file? Sorry, I don't quite understand. Actually, what I'd like to do right now is I'm going to select, oh no, I'm going to select these parts over here. Yes. Go into sculpt mode and say face set from selection. Oh, maybe it was already there. Yeah, there's a face set now. So I can then with the Alt A menu, auto mask by face sets. You can also find this up here, auto masking by face sets. And then if I move this, it's not going to move this part over here. I can move them separately, even though it's the same object. And I can just disable the face sets for in the overlay, so the color is not bothering me. And I can just keep going. Actually, I'm going to hide these objects over here, the eyes, all that stuff, the tongue. I just want to focus on the shell for now. Go. Oh. Okay. So this is where the attributes, the copy attributes window is actually going to come into effect. I can select my retopology, select the sculpt, and then go Control C location, Control C rotation. And now it copied the same rotation and location as the sculpt, which is actually kind of useful right now because then it's at least aligned in the same way. There we go. So now I can work on with X mirror on, and it's just going to work. There we go. Again, with the snake hook, you can get a bit of twisting in here. Snake hook brush. There we go. I don't want to shrink wrap this to the existing sculpt. I just want to roughly have this in the same shape. If I shrink wrap it, I'm going to have the same problems as before, where it's just not aligning with the details that I had before, the creases and the volumes. There we go. I don't know what's going on in the chat right now. Sorry. Okay. Huh. Oh my god. This is very much busted down here. I would say this is like most of the way there. Nobody speaks. Oh no. I think I'm gonna get everything back. Focus on the retopology again. There we go. I'm actually going to switch to Workbench just so I can see everything a bit more in detail. Oh god, I should not smooth. Should not smooth anything right now. What? No, I'm not going to. What? I'm not going to use. I'm not going to do animation or rigging tutorials. At least not me. Maybe the animators or riggers at the rigger at the animation studio are interested, but it's not planned right now. Not really. Also, again, if you have questions, tag me or like Blender Studio, then I can actually see it a bit better. Otherwise, I'm kind of left in the dark. Sometimes it's just like I'm focusing too much on the task here, and then I'm missing a question. Let's see. Oh man, the shape doesn't quite match up. How did they get picked up for the animation studio? Well, I mean, it's pretty much like any other animation studio. We all got hired to work on the movies, also on tutorials and other content from time to time. But that's basically it. There's like plenty of positions usually open or like available for working at the Blender studio. There's for one the art department or like animation team working on the latest movies, but there's also developers and all that sort of stuff. There's plenty of people working. Basically, I mean, we're all testing and developing Blender mainly. The movies are a way of testing. Like it's just we're making movies to make Blender better, and we're making Blender to make movies. It's basically how it works. But if you're interested in working at the Blender studio, you can just apply. Especially once we go into production, there's usually there's usually help needed for animation, especially. Okay. Are you using a mouse or tablet? Tablet, always. I think I mentioned this in the last stream that I do have a Cintiq here at work, like a display tablet, but I don't like to use it. Or I do like it, but because it gives me a little bit of extra precision, but it's actually not that comfortable to use. And it has ergonomic issues. You're getting like neck pain, back pain, your arms hurt because you need to work in a very specific position. And I recommend people to just get the cheapest, most basic tablet from like Wacom or Huion that you can find. And that's all you need. For sculpting, also painting tasks, drawing or something, it's really all you need. You don't need anything fancy, really. Don't see it as like an entry point that like, oh, you need to have the latest, biggest hardware. No, in terms of tablets, you just need simple, something simple, something that works. Yeah, I've mentioned this before in the stream, that I'm retopologizing this in pose because it's only visible in one shot in the movie, and we don't need to have it really any more complicated. How long have you done 3D? I think for about, it must be 10 years now. So it's been a while. You know the reason why email humans lazy tutorials are so popular? Because it teaches people how to do things. Aha. I mean, it's true, but I mean, the lazy tutorials are also showing you things, how to do it, yeah, in a fast and loose way. Smart in the sense that you do the minimum amount of effort, the minimum amount of work to make something that looks good enough for what you need. This sort of thing is a bit more complicated. Also, Ian's tutorials are massively more entertaining than what I could do. Which render engine will this be? Will the new movie be in? Okay, yeah, we're going to use cycles. But Eevee a lot for like working on the assets and shaders in a loose way, for basically previewing the shaders that we're going to use in later for cycles. Okay, so what the eyes I could pretty much just reuse, to be honest. I would like to just duplicate these and move them over to my Retopology collection. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to rotate these 90 degrees. Reset the rotation, rotate these 90 degrees. Oh, God. And 180 degrees. Apply the rotation. Oh, they're still sharing the object data. Oops. Apply the rotation, apply the scale, ideally also. What happened to German efficiency? Okay, I'll take that. Touche. Although this is pretty efficient, to be honest. Like, it would take me a lot longer if I had to retopologize this in a T-pose and first sculpt it in a T-pose, and then it takes a lot more time. Alt-R, rotate 90 degrees, move it around a little bit. I want this little eye dot to be in the center of the eye, just so we can later, when rigging it, move it anywhere where we want it to be. This is like the default position, basically. Selection to cursor, rotate this 90 degrees, bam. I'm going to offset it a little bit from the eye, apply rotation, apply scale. And now, yeah, that's basically it. I hope it's not going to be 10 hours of this live stream, but I'm at some point going to call it a day. It's already 4 o'clock. 3 hours live stream already. Let's see how much I can still get in here. I mean, it's the shell is there, the body is there. I just need to enhance the creases a little bit. The retopology is basically done, most of the way there. The only thing really missing is the eyelets right now. I mean, it's basically the only thing. So oh, Jesus. I am going to hide everything else. Oh boy, this is creepy. I'm going to bring back the lights. I'm also going to bring back the eyes, ideally. Yes. Looking so weird once you have it zeroed out with the rotation of the eyes. Yes. The only thing I really need to retopologize over here is the eyelets. And they're actually pretty straightforward. I can just add a UV sphere, change the divisions a bit. I think I'm going to go for 16. Let's go by 16 by 8 as a starting point. Get rid of this, scale this down. There we go. Kind of get it in the same proportions. Do you have a formal education in 3D? Yes. Although I don't know how formal you can get. I did do an apprenticeship in a German studio, a 3D animation studio. We did various projects there. I did that for 3 years with school education as well, but I didn't study per se. It's not really like, it's not really called studying. I don't know. It's an apprenticeship. And after that, and before that, there was also a bit of time working on 3D. But I would say that's my formal education. Are you good in traditional drawing? No. I wouldn't say I'm good. I'm passable, I hope. I can do drawings. I can draw in a way that I can like develop some sort of concept by myself, but I wouldn't call myself a concept artist. How long it takes to render with a rendering system in Blender for this film to get a job done? Well, it depends on what the job is. If it's just rendering this character, it can be done within minutes, especially if you're using Eevee, it could be within a minute. If we're talking about actual shots, a long time. The shots are always full of stuff, very complicated. And it depends on how complex the shot is, of course. Sometimes the shot is very simple and can be rendered within an hour. Sometimes it takes a lot longer than that. Maybe it's even 10 minutes. I mean, there's like shots that don't need a lot of time. And if you're rendering on powerful machines, then there's not a lot of wasted time. Okay. So for the eyelets, I'm not going to shrink wrap this. What I only want is to kind of get this properly merged and just model it from spheres so it actually looks as accurately as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge these two sides. Maybe not the most efficient way of doing it, but I'm going to do it this way anyway. Yeah, hardware, number of frames, scene complexity, yeah. There's a lot of things going on in a shot, and which makes it complicated and hard to render. And there's also extra complexity if things can go wrong and you need to re-render things. It always happens. Happens a lot. There we go. I just want to get rid of these faces that are like going on over here. Bam. It's already most of the way. When will this film be released? Please don't spam. Later this year. I don't remember quite as well right now. I don't want to say anything that's wrong, but the target is later this year. Sorry. How will the project be rendered? On render farm or a central server? Both. We have our own render farm in the studio, but that's mainly being used for rendering work in progress shots, getting immediate results back. But later on, we're gonna rent some render farms to make this actually work. Merging vertices, does that actually make them one single vertex, or are they just snapped together? They are merged. Like if you select two vertices and you say M and then any of these options, which you will probably get in a list instead of a pie menu because I built this myself, it actually merges them. What? No, later this year. It's maybe October, maybe November. I'm not sure. Jesus. I don't want to say too much about this character. It's a bit spoilery, but he's there for one shot, like a couple shots, and that's why I'm putting the bare minimum of work into this. He is very close on the screen. Halloween release. That makes a lot of sense. October was spot on. Let's see if we can make it. There's still a lot of work to do, but I'm sure we can manage. Yes, exactly. He's in there for one shot, getting shot. Okay. Here's what I would really like to do. Yeah, it's the 13th Blender Open Movie. I love that coincidence. Definitely planned. I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier. But I'm also going to add a cast modifier. This is interesting. So with a cast modifier, I can actually define a certain radius, and it's going to force it to be a sphere. But for that, I would like to add a vertex group. I'm going to call this cast. And I'm going to assign everything to it, but remove these loops over here. Now in the modifier, I can say, okay, everything that's connected to this vertex group, please use it in the cast modifier. Oh, shit. Oh, no, everything is visible again. It's not good. Oh, where did they go? Oh, it's in the wrong collection. Really? How did that happen? Just getting rid of some colors. Actually going to use outlines. No, there's not going to be any spoilers. I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. Because that's just a nice thing to do. These things are public. If you want to know really about details on the movie, you can check out everything on the Blender Cloud. But even there, really major spoilers were kind of prefacing. We're mentioning, okay, if you continue over here and check out everything we're doing, the production logs and so on, you're going to go into spoiler territory. I'm sorry. But yeah, the live streams are not supposed to spoil anything. Minor asset streams, yes. I mean, I would like to make bite-sized streams of just showing prop modeling maybe or something like that. That would be nice. That would be really nice. I'm gonna remove these from the vertex group as well. There we go. I really like the style of this movie. It's not usually for Blender. Are you guys trying to catch with Pixar? Oh my god, no. I mean, pretty much if you look at the lineup of Blender Open movies, we're trying out a different style every time, or like deviating into different directions. But I do think it's kind of funny that after we worked on the style for like over half a year, that the new Pixar movie gets announced, and it actually shares quite a few similarities, which is not something negative. It's just how things go. Like you are going to do something that other people have already done. There's no way around it. But I do love the look of the new Pixar movie. The trailer for I forgot the name. No. Oh yeah. Check out the gallery. There's plenty of stuff there. But again, be aware of spoilers. Even when I'm sharing stuff online on social media and stuff like that, I'm trying to not show any spoilers. I'm blurring stuff out or really just showing very specific things. But on the Blender Cloud, it's a bit more tricky to do that because we're showing the production. We're showing what we're doing. Yep, I'm saving all the time. Once you have it crash a few times when using the alpha version, you just get used to saving every time, constantly. At the studio here, while making the movies, we're always using the latest alpha version to test the latest features that are going to get into the next Blender release. It's the way of making the movies is basically a way of stress testing the features and giving features. Pablo is right. We can mark spoilers on the Blender Cloud, but some assets still have some spoilers in it, like. There's expression tests there that show some that are like picked from very specific moments of the movie, so you're getting a glimpse of what kind of expressions are actually planned. So it's like sometimes it's very minor, but there can be like some actual spoilers trickled in there, and it's a bit hard to avoid. Okay, here's something I like to do to create the inner side. I like to duplicate the outer side, use Alt-S to scale it inwards, which takes a bit of time, like this, so that it meets the other side, and then I can just bridge these parts over here. Yeah, oh my god. First, like this. Maybe now it works. Come on. Bridge edge loops. There we go. Is this going to be rendered only in cycles? Yes, but also no. We are always rendering the assets of the movie also in Eevee as like a preview render engine. But the end results at the end of the production, like the movie, is going to be rendered in cycles. Maybe we're gonna use a bit of trickery like in Spring and Coffee Run, where some effects and minor things also rendered in Eevee. In Spring, we did that for the puffs of smoke, for the visible breath of the characters. we just very quickly rendered the little smoke simulations in Eevee. And in Coffee Run, everything is rendered in Eevee, but motion blur is rendered in cycles. And very specific effects like cavity were rendered in the viewport. It was a very weird mix and mashup of different render engines. Very interesting, actually. I'm actually going to add another loop over here. Slide this down. It should cast again to the sphere shape. And I'm going to again remove all of these from the vertex group so they don't cast. And now I can smooth this out again a little bit with the slight relax brush. And it should just be cast back to the spherical shape. Not hungry? I'm actually getting a bit hungry, but it's not too long ago that I had lunch. Oh yeah, Eevee has working motion blur now, though. Or depth of field, I think. Yeah, it has motion blur. But while we were working on Coffee Run, it didn't. So it came in later, unfortunately. We could have really used that feature. Why does the feature always pop up once you're already done with the project? Now that someone mentioned it, I'm getting self-aware about how often I'm saving constantly. Thank you. And it hasn't crashed for a while, so I shouldn't be this paranoid. Oh wow, I'm really losing a lot of volume here. I can increase the radius if I want to. Yes, that would be nice. Yeah, I mean, for the question, Blender is actually really good for making movies, especially. I mean, there's plenty of use cases for using Blender. And I mean, if you just look at the Blender Open Movies, we've been using Blender to make movies for a while. What's going on over here? Especially for smaller scale productions, I think it is really useful. How regularly do you make a backup file? Oh yeah. I'm not too worried about destroying any significant work. I think I'm careful enough, but I can recommend people to create iterations of files, save as version 01, version 03, version 04, and so on. But we're also committing regularly to our repository, so we have everything backed up. Oh yeah, with using Blender for animated movies, there's always, of course, the caveat of if it's compatible with the studio's workflow. If a studio is primarily working in Maya, then of course animating in Blender is less of an option. It can still be, but probably not. But in terms of, for example, modeling, I would say it is actually very valid. But if you're making a film by yourself in a small team, and you don't want to, if you can't pay for the licenses, or you just want to keep it as open as possible, and everyone should use the same software, you can get pretty far with Blender. Oh. This is kind of creepy. I'm gonna hide these eyes. There we go. Now I already set the 3D cursor to be there, so I can just duplicate this eyelid object, snap it to the other side, Control M, X, apply scale, go into edit mode, recalculate normals, and I'm good to go. It's a lot of things to do. Sorry if I'm going over it a bit fast, but that's basically it. Oh yeah, if as an independent filmmaker, I agree. It's like, or like in a small team, just because Blender's toolset is so wide, you can pretty much do anything in it. There's nothing quite stopping you of just doing all of the movie-related tasks in Blender. And for that, it's amazing. My voice is actually getting really tired right now. I think I'm going to call it a day in a moment, but I'm also almost done. The rest will be fine tweaking. So if I set these back to be textured, we can see I can share the materials over here. Oh my god. Oh my god, this is so creepy. Oh Jesus. There we go. I just want these to be at least white. So now if we compare the two, the Sculpt and the Retopology, it's actually most of the way there. Like the rest, like tweaking the shapes a little bit more, getting those creases a little bit back by moving around some edges. And then I need to still model the mouth a little bit, but this is almost it. From there on out, I can just hand this over to rigging and shading to Simon and Demeter, basically, other members of the art team, and they can take this further. But okay, so how long have I been streaming? Like 3 hours? Yeah. So this was something. I think I'm just gonna call it. I'm just gonna call it a day now. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. And next time, maybe it's going to be something completely different. I don't know what I'm going to be working on. It's always a surprise. So 3.5 hours. That's a good time. Okay, awesome. I will also share the file online, probably on the Blender Cloud, so you can download this yourself, but only once it's done. So you can look forward to that. But you can also download the sculpting files and all other files. It's just all available. So thank you very much for watching. And I hope you had a good time. And I'll see you next time.